How's it going, everyone? Today, we're diving back into Genesis chapter 6. A few weeks ago, we talked about the sons of God. We were examining who are the sons of God. Are they men? Are they fallen angels? Who exactly are they? So if you haven't seen that video, please click up here and check out that video first. Today, we're going to be talking about the Nephilim. Who exactly were the Nephilim? Were they giants or were they something else? To answer that question, we're going to get some help. We'll be taking a look at thoughts from Sam Shamoun, Rabbi Jeff Zaremsky, Rob Skiba, Pastor Doug Wilson, and Dr. Peter Gentry. For now, let's lay the foundation with the more widely accepted interpretations. Without further ado, here's Pastor Doug Wilson.
Well, my understanding, I know that there's some disagreement about Genesis 6, but my understanding is that B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, looked on the daughters of men and saw they were fair and married them, and then the result was of this interbreeding was the Nephilim, which were giants. The other reading is that the sons of God were the godly line of Seth, who were corrupted and fell into sin by marrying the daughters of men. The problem with that is that all the masculinity is on one side and all the femininity on the other. It's the sons of God and the daughters of men.
Yeah,
and then the end result of this intermarriage is giants, which is not what you usually get when a Christian marries a non-Christian. And so I think there's more going on than that. So then the question, if the giants were the end result of this marriage and then there was the flood, what do we do with Nephilim after the flood?
Right.
Where do they come from? Weren't they all killed in the flood? And I would say, yeah, they were all killed in the flood. So there are different possibilities. One is that the same thing happened again after the flood, only not on as grand a scale. Another possibility is that the genetic material from this misbehavior was preserved on the ark. In other words, through Noah's family. I don't think that would be true if God's whole point was to wipe it out. Why would he preserve it? And then the other, I think the most likely explanation is that the giants, the Anakim, the Nephilim after the flood are simply given the same name as so the giants after the flood are NBA player giants, big human beings, not anything supernatural, and that they were given the same name as the Nephilim before the flood.
But what if the Nephilim giants were never the offspring of fallen angels intermingling with humans? Here's Dr. Peter Gentry breaking this idea down.
There's another interpretation that's possible. When it says the Nephilim were there in those days and also afterward, it could mean that before the angels had sex with the human
they were
women,
already there.
The Nephilim were there, and they were also there after the angels had sex with women. So it could mean that the Nephilim had nothing to do with the angels marrying the humans. I think that is the correct interpretation for two reasons.
Okay.
First of all, I examined every occurrence of this expression and also afterward. I went to the Hebrew Bible, I looked up every occurrence of this phrase, and I examined how it was used. And the second interpretation best fits and suits how this word is used. So when it says they were there in those days and also afterward, it means the Nephilim were there before angels cohabited with humans, and they were there after angels cohabited with humans. There's a second reason why this is the correct interpretation. The last sentence says they were the heroes who were from the ancient past, the men of renown. In this case, what Moses is doing is he's demythologizing the Nephilim. One of the things that we should notice is the text doesn't tell us who the Nephilim were. What does that mean? Why doesn't the text tell us who they were? Because they were well known to the first readers of this text. The first readers of this text knew who the Nephilim were and didn't need that explained to them. And all Moses is saying is, look, whoever you think these heroes are, like Gilgamesh, these ancient heroes, these men of renown, you've read about them in the ancient mythologies. Whoever they were, they're not part of this story. They don't come from the cohabitation of angels and humans.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's the correct interpretation. But the problem is, this has been a difficult text to interpret.
Right.
And it has not always been interpreted correctly down through the centuries. And in the 3rd century BC and the 2nd century BC, they came to an incorrect interpretation. They thought that the Nephilim were giants who were produced by angels cohabiting with humans. And this got into the Book of Enoch. And Paul warns his readers against this because he says in his letters to Timothy, don't argue over endless genealogies and foolish myths. This is a direct reference to the Book of Enoch, which has a long genealogy of all the angels until you finally come down to Satan, and then they blame all the evil in the world on Satan. What they're trying to do is they're trying to blame chaos and death and evil in the world on angelic sin, instead of blaming it on human sin. And the Bible clearly puts the blame on humans.
He made some great points, but I think the reason why some people believe that the angels, the fallen angels, were the catalyst for sin amongst humans, not the seed, but the catalyst, right? Because we know, what happened with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden is what introduced sin to humanity. But in order to explain the exponential increase of sin in the world, people look to things like the Book of Enoch, which pretty much says these fallen angels introduced humanity to vanity and metallurgy and warring and all of this stuff, which acted like a catalyst for sin. So that's where people draw ideas from the Book of Enoch. But I completely understand what Dr. Peter Gentry was saying here.
Genesis 6:4. I don't know if you caught it. Okay. It says, now there were giants in those days, and then afterwards. When it says there were giants in those days, what days is the author referring to? You got it. The days leading up to the flood. The days before the flood. The days leading up to the flood. Thank you. But then it says there were giants before the days of the flood, and then after that. How can you have giants existing after the flood if the giants are the offspring of the angelic sons of God with earthly women? Are you saying that another influx of angelic beings sired women even after the flood? So this is why I say, read carefully.
Yeah.
Read slowly. Because if you actually read the passage doesn't necessarily say the Nephilim are the offspring of the sons of God. Now let me tell you where this word giants appears again in the Pentateuch, the books of Moses. Numbers 13, 31 to 33. Pay attention to verse 33. But the men that went up with him said, we be not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, the land through which we have gone to search, it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw in it are men of great stature. Notice 33. And there we saw the giants. Guess what the Hebrew word is? Nephilim. Nephilim. We saw the Nephilim in Canaan, Moses, during the time of the Exodus. The sons of Anak. Oh, wow. Notice the Nephilim are not the sons of the angels. They're the sons of a human being named Anak. And Anak is a Canaanite, a descendant of Ham. The Nephilim are not the offspring of the angels. They're a group of human beings who are excessively huge. Goliath is one of them, but they arise from the human gene pool. They're from the gene pool of the human race. They're not the byproduct of angels sleeping with women. In our gene pool, human gene pool, we have the capacity to produce dwarfs and giants. Dwarfs and giants.
Right.
That's in our gene pool. So it is a misunderstanding, as far as I'm concerned, that the Nephilim were the children of the angels. No, the children of the angels were there when the Nephilim were there. They existed side by side.
The next clip I'm about to share with you, I think you'll find particularly interesting. He, like Sam Shamoun, believes the sons of God in Genesis 6 are fallen angels. But unlike Sam Shamoun, who thinks the giants post-flood are like the giants and the dwarves we have today, this person has delved into the apocryphal text and has come out with a very interesting theory. Without further ado, here is Rob Skiba.
Genesis 6:4 itself, I maintain, doesn't even support the idea of multiple incursions. If you just read the text, it says the Nephilim were in the earth in those days. What days? Well, if you continue reading in all the other supporting texts, the days of Jared. And also after that, when is that? The days of Jared. When the sons of God, who are the angels, came unto the daughters of men, when? In the days of Jared. And they bare children to them. The same, who were born in the days of Jared, were the mighty men who were of old, the men of renown. The word old comes from the Hebrew word olam, which is translated very often, about 100 plus times, as forever and or everlasting. So nothing about Genesis 6:4 even remotely supports the idea that we're talking about angels coming back again after the flood. So after I'm looking at this text and realize after the first incursion, 3550 BC, 500 years later, those children are all dead. Well, we still got another 700 years or so to go to get to the flood. I realized that there was actually a pre-flood return of the Nephilim, but it didn't come about as a result of angels mating with women. When you take the ancient texts and you synchronize them together, again, I don't have time to go through all this. You can see it on the board. The text in black is the Genesis text, and the text in red is the supporting text. You see the breakdown of events, how everything took place, what happened when, and we see in Genesis chapter 6, verses 8 through 10, that Noah was genetically pure. Now, his wife, according to the extra biblical text, was the daughter of Enoch. So we know Enoch was a good guy, right? He was so righteous God took him, right? So good pick for a wife for Noah. So if Noah and his wife are genetically pure, it stands to reason then that his 3 sons are pure too, right? Everybody with me? No mention of angels. Noah, his wife, and his 3 sons are pure. Who's left?
The
That's
wives.
all you have left. Occam's razor, right? When you have competing ideas, the one that requires the least amount of assumptions.
So the wives' bloodline were tainted?
Well, and the wives don't even show up until verse 18, chapter 6, verses 11 and 12.
So that Nephilim bloodline got on the ark that way.
Which is all. With the exception of those who are genetically pure to the verses prior, right? Because those are singled out. These guys are pure.
All flesh.
Wives aren't mentioned until verse 18. Quick quiz. Does 18 become before or after 12? After. Right. Okay.
So the wives were corrupted.
So I want to unpack Genesis 6:12 because it says that all flesh should become corrupted.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, the extra biblical text of Joshua goes into a whole lot more detail and tells you that how they became corrupted is it began to blend species together. They began to blend animals and plants and reptiles and fish and birds and people. The corruption of all flesh came as a result not of angels mating with women, but as a result of blending species. Well, guess what we're doing today?
Blending species.
Now Yeshua said in Matthew 24:37 that the last days would be like the days of Noah, not the days of Jared. The days of Jared were angels mating with women. The days of Noah, especially specifically the last 120 years leading up to the flood, were all about genetic modification. Also confirmed in Jubilee.
How do we know that?
And this is a recap. This
the
is
Book
after
of
the
Joshua,
flood. Noah's kind of giving a recap of what happened that led to the flood. The angels made with women, all that stuff. And he says, and after this. The after this is in a pre-flood context. The after this of Jubilee 7:24 is the after that of Genesis 6:4. They sinned against the beasts and the birds and all that moveth and walketh on the earth, and much blood was shed on the earth, and every imagination and desire of men imagined vanity and evil continually. The violence was a byproduct of the blending of species. I'll talk a little bit more about that. He created us to be what? The temple of what? The Holy Ghost. He created us in the image and likeness of himself. He created a like body for him to inhabit. But if you start blending species into your body and jacking up your house, he's saying, hey, you better knock it off. I'm not going to be able to hang out with you anymore because you're not looking like the image and likeness that I created you to be.
So this could explain why there's such emphasis on genealogies in Genesis. Also, in the story of Noah, right? The animals, each of their own, two of each kind. Well, I mean, we know in some cases there's more than two, but it was like specific with each kind. So that's really interesting. And as Sam Shamoun talked about, how the mighty men of old, the men of renown, that's where stories like Gilgamesh and Hercules and all that stuff could have come from. What about things like the Sphinx or these chimera type creatures in different cultures? Could that have come from somewhere also? I mean, it is a bit fantastical, but it is interesting.
And so then that brings us to the post-flood return of the Nephilim. Of course, we have the flood take place, and then after the flood, the giants are there right away. But I think the smoking gun that obliterates the whole idea of multiple incursions is the same guy, Moses, who wrote Genesis 6, also wrote the rest of the book and the rest of the Torah. And he wrote in Genesis chapter 9, just 3 chapters later, verse 18 and 19, he says, the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham is the father of Canaan. Why did he just insert that there? Oh, no, by the way, Ham is the father of Canaan. Who are the Israelites always having to deal with in the land? The Canaanites. Who were the ones that they were consistently told to utterly destroy? Kill the women, kill the children, kill the animals, wipe out everything. Don't even eat the food until the 3rd or 4th generation of produce. Canaanites. Ham is the father of Canaan. Not an angel. Right there. And if you still didn't get it, it's verse 19. It says, these are the 3 sons of Noah, and of them was the whole world overspread. Other translations say populated. The whole earth was populated by these 3 guys. No mention of angels anywhere in the picture. So when you look at the breakdown of their offspring, Ham by far has some very interesting kids. There are many giants in the offspring of Canaan, obviously the Canaanites we talked about. There's at least one in Mitzrayim's line, that being Caphtor. None that I could find in Put, and one in Cush, but I don't believe he was born that way. I believe he did something to modify himself and became that way, and that would be Nimrod. The Amorites are mentioned over 80 times in your Bible. Amorites described by the Book of Amos as being as tall as cedar trees. They come from Canaan, son of Ham, no mention of angels. And the Philistines mentioned over 200 times, and they come from Caphtor, son of Mitzrayim, son of Ham, no mention of angels anywhere. And we know of at least a few famous Philistines, right? Goliath and his brothers.
Yeah.
So clearly something's going on there. There's no giants anywhere in the line of Shem that I could find anyway. That's a good thing. Who come from Shem? Yeshua comes from Shem, right? So that line's pure. And right, son of man, pure, genetically pure. And there's some in Japheth. Now, you won't get this in Scripture. You won't find this information in Scripture. If you look through history, however, just do a Google search on Gog and Magog plus giant. And you'll see that all throughout history, many different cultures understood that Gog and Magog were giants.
Till now, we've looked at some pretty incredible theories. The Titans of Greek mythology, could they have been inspired by the Nephilim giants in Genesis chapter 6? Hercules and Gilgamesh, all these mythological figures, could they have been inspired by the mighty men of old, the men of renown? I mean, we have flood stories all over the world, and if these individuals are tied to reality in some sort of way, it makes sense that we have stories all over the world talking about it. I mean, even the fallen angels, we have stories all over the world of celestial beings coming down to earth and intermingling with humans. Like, think about the Anunnaki, or even the Greek pantheon. You have these Greek gods coming down to earth and mating with people. What if the Greek pantheon was inspired by the fallen angels of Genesis 6? If, in fact, the sons of God are fallen angels, I'm not sure yet. But it is extremely interesting to think about. And even if they were the Nephilim actually giants, or was that just an exaggeration that happened as people told the stories over and over and over again, and people started exaggerating, making them more fantastical, because that's what happens. Because another definition for Nephilim is the fallen ones. And so if we look at the interpretation that the sons of God are from the godly line of Seth, they have fallen, they've been corrupted, they've fallen from that godly line and have married, intermingled with the daughters of men. So they were unequally yoked. Let's listen to Rabbi Jeff Zaremsky as he speaks on this.
So giants. Who are these giants? Well, they were giants. Just as there were giants in the world. It's just kind of a statement of fact. There were giants in those days and also afterwards. That's all it's saying. There were giants before the flood. There were giants after the flood. They were living 900 years. They could do a lot of growth in 900 years, right? So they were built to live They were built to live forever.
That makes sense.
They were built to live forever. But even after sin, they continued to live over 900 years. And so they were built much better than you are and me. Right? So they were great. So if their lives were 900 years and our lives are 70 to 90 years or so, right? They were living 10 times as long, right? And if we're 5 or 6 feet, do you think they easily could have been 2 or 3 times our height? And so he's writing, yeah, they were giants and they were big people back then. And we still got some of those big people here now. Even in Canaan, there's some of those big people still around. That's all he's saying. Not saying that these giants were an offspring of evil angels and women having children that were giants because of the
because it doesn't explicitly say that at all.
Amalgamation of this mixing of these two seeds, seed and egg. No, that's not what it's saying. It doesn't say that at all. It's just saying they were giants. And that's just a statement of fact. And they were mighty men of old, men of renown. Well, what does renown mean? Reputation. They're well known, right? They've got a lot of influence. They're mighty men of old. Well, who are these? Are these because they were children of evil angels? Where do we go to look? The Bible. The Bible. Let's look just 2 chapters before. We already looked at this in the past. The children of Cain. The daughters of Cain, right? So Cain bore Enoch, this guy, and then all the way down to Jabal. He was the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock. And Jabal, his brother, was father of all those who play the harp and flute. And Tubal-Cain, an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. So who has a monopoly on livestock, music industry, the arts, and bronze and iron manufacturing? Cain, Cain's children, Cain's offspring. And are they the children of God or the children of men? Children of God or children of the devil? Children of men, children of the devil, right? Yeah, these are not following God. And yet they control the industry. They are men of renown. They have a lot of influence. They are mighty men. They are instructors of every craftsman, of all who play the flute and the harp. They run the livestock industry. You want to buy some clothing, some cotton?
Good point.
Not cotton, some wool? You got to go to them. Right? You want some goat's milk? You got to go to them. You want to go listen to some concert? They're the ones playing it. You need a hoe or a shovel? You got to go to them. They're men of renown. That's what it says. So in chapter 6, it's just saying those giants, some of these giants and these ones that are evil, they are the ones who are having the greatest influence. They're in control. And God's people are in helping matters because God's people are uniting with them and diluting the seed. And what is a person who is half on God's side and half on the world side? Are they saved or are they lost? Lost. So you have these children who are being raised by one godly parent who's compromised already and one ungodly parent. And so they're looking at this, they're kind of 50-50. Who should I choose? And so already now the seed of God is being diluted. And so the children of men were multiplying. The children of men were multiplying on the earth and thus having a big influence, a bigger influence than the children of God. That's all it was saying. And that's exactly what it's saying here. And then after this guy, Tubal-Cain, who's the next person after him? And after Tubal and after Jabal, who's after them? Do you remember we looked at this chapter? Who came after them in the lineage of Cain? No one is mentioned. Why is no one mentioned? Because they got flooded out. The flood came and destroyed them all. So these guys were the ones who were living right at the time in chapter 6 that it's describing. They're having a big influence. And so in chapter 6 it says they're the ones who are having all this influence, men of renown. And if you were paying attention, I mentioned them 2 chapters ago. That's what it's saying. So let's go back to the chapter and
That
read
makes
it
sense.
from what we've seen from the Bible. See if it makes sense. It came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them. Then verse 2, that the sons of God, godly people, saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful. Now, why are the daughters of men more beautiful than the daughters of God? Yeah, that's right. Just like today. Right? The godly women, they're modest, they're not showing themselves off, they're not flirting around, they're humble and meek and seeking the Lord and obedient to their parents and doing what is right and doing what is good. And the evil women, just like when those daughters of Moab came in, seducing, showing off too much flesh and flirting around and showing themselves off, winking and getting close and too close. And the carnal heart, the carnal nature in these sons of God, these young men are getting drawn to that, and they're yielding to that. The flesh and the lust is taking over. Their mind is serving God. We love God. I'm going to follow my parents' influence. But then they yield to the flesh. Nothing new under the sun. Right? You don't need some fanciful tale to explain these verses. All you got to do is look at reality in our world today, of what is happening among the sons of God today. Same thing. That's all. Chapter 6, Genesis chapter 6, 1 through 7, is not a standalone story. Certainly not a whole book in itself. It's the lead to the Noah story. God telling us what it was like in Noah's day so that we'd understand our problem and our issues today. And we need to learn from their mistake and not make the same mistake again. And come out of the world. Again, not just through marriage, but the whole thing, coming out of the worldliness and being separate. Because we're not shining as lights among a dark generation if we're just like them. And so we need to be on guard. And we need to trust in the Lord and serve Him. Keep our eyes focused on Him. And we shouldn't be surprised when the majority of so-called professed godly people, so-called children of God, are living for the world and uniting with the world and the things of this world and the people of this world.
That right there is the most important thing. Keep our eyes fixed on God. Keep our eyes focused on Him. Everything else comes after that. All these videos are super cool. They're super fun to look into. The controversy, the conspiracy, all the theories. It's super cool to look into. But at the end of the day, what really matters? Whether the Nephilim were actually giants or not, whether the sons of God were actually angels or humans, or is that going to save us? No. Keep our eyes fixed on God and everything else will sort itself out. Yes, details are important, very important. But as we look into stuff like this, don't lose focus on what really matters. That's why it's so important to lay the groundwork, lay that foundation, and then you can start climbing up and building on top of that. But that's going to be it for this video. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who do you think the Nephilim are? Did any of these theories speak to you more than the other? Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.